You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about exciting, creative, and innovative ways of living. Produced in Santa Barbara, California, Sustainable World focuses on positive solutions to environmental challenges, solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe, how to plant a food forest, restorative design, or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned to Sustainable World Radio. I'm Jill Cloutier. This is part 2 of an interview with Carol Seinfeld about wastewater management entitled, What a Waste, the Scoop on Poop. There's a lot of criticism about how wastewater treatment plants are unable to remove heavy metals, certain chemicals, prescription drugs from, the sewage water, that even there's no screen, I guess, small enough to take out some of those chemicals. What's the effect of composting toilets and kind of using plants or bacteria to clean our waste? Is it able to handle those same chemicals or no?
Whether pharmaceuticals, the drugs we take, and the heavy metals that usually are from industry, not so much from our homes, especially now that nobody has dark rooms in their homes. Those are a huge issue, and it's an issue whether we're talking about composting toilets or whether we're talking about conventional wastewater treatment systems, because all of that's going somewhere. So heavy metals, typically a city works on that by looking at what factories are on the system, and those factories often have to clean up their own waste. They're often taken off the system. So heavy metals aren't quite the problem they used to be in sewage. At the same time, I like the idea of a community being much more aware of what goes down the drain if they know that it ultimately will end up on soils. So I think we'll see a lot more responsibility in what's put down the drain. We won't have so many people pouring Drano and used motor oil down the drain if they know that's going to end up on a tree farm near their house. And at the same time with pharmaceuticals, that's actually a wide range. It's the same thing with chemicals and heavy metals. That's actually a broad category of stuff. Some of it actually gets pulled apart by nature or time. Other stuff, not as much. And what has been found with some pharmaceuticals, like hormones, nature tends to pull it apart, especially in a more complex ecological system like a constructed wetland. A hormone, which, let's remember, all of that stuff was put together by nature originally, except heavy metals, which is a much older process. So what nature put together, nature can take apart. Our job is to bring as much nature to the table and create complex systems that can pull it apart in the time frame we want right away. So I think there's a lot of potential for ecological approaches to deal with pharmaceuticals. I don't think they're as much of a concern, I should say that carefully, as the public has feared. I think that they are managed more robustly than we realize. But it's great that everyone is aware of what goes down the drain and what its destination is.
What are your thoughts on sewage sludge? And that is a different product from composted waste.
That's right. Sewage sludge. I'm not as religious as I used to be about the idea of using sewage sludge. But to me, all of the issues about what could be in it and the question mark remind us all that complexity at the bathroom level, having a different pipe just for toilets, might be a solution that ultimately gets rid of the questions around sewage sludge. If we know that we haven't added Drano and industrial inputs and pharmaceuticals, actually those would go in with the toilet. We haven't added some chemicals of concern from some other operation to the wastewater mix, then we're not worried about what's in that sewage sludge. We might test it for hormones and presence of somebody's heart medicine. But for the most part, there shouldn't be any heavy metal content in composted poop of concern. If there is, it means somebody has a diet that's probably going to kill them before it kills anybody who ate an apple from a tree that was fertilized with sewage sludge. Most sewage sludge actually goes to the landfill and is used as cover. Some of it goes to forests. I don't think any of it legally is used for food production in the U.S. Let me go back on that. That may be very wrong. Probably some is. Certainly you can't be a certified organic farm if you use wastewater sewage sludge. A person in that industry told me that there is so much testing of sewage sludge and so much work by wastewater treatment plants to take all factories with discharges that might have heavy metals or chemicals of concern off the system that we shouldn't, and they're heavily regulated, the sewage sludge content, but we shouldn't be that concerned about it. So, it's one of those things that feels out of our control, and it's something to be concerned about. But I would look for the workaround. Look for ways to capture the resources in poop without getting to the sewage sludge stage.
Do you envision a day, at least here in the States, where our nutrient cycling is a closed-loop system instead of just being sent out to waterways?
I do, Jill, and there are a few things that are driving that. Our federal laws for what can be put into public waters, our rivers and streams and seashores, are getting stricter. No longer can we put sewage that only had the solids settled out, liquid sewage into the water. No longer can we just kill the pathogen but let the nutrients go into the water. Those laws are being made tighter, more restrictive, and they're being enforced more, which is driving a lot of communities to look at ecological ways to capture those nutrients instead of disposing of them, or, again, the way we tend to remove nutrients in wastewater is to bubble air into it, so it actually it forms from a nitrogen source that's a little bit more solid. It forms to a gas form and goes into the air. And remember, our atmosphere is mostly nitrogen. But when we bubble air into wastewater, it's like bubbling air into a milkshake through a straw. It requires a lot of energy. And energy is more costly than it ever has been before. So all of these things, plus the fact that an estimated 52% of the U.S. population is moving to cities along the coasts, creating densities we've never seen before. And we have all of this recovery money and interest in clean energy sources. It's driving a look at ways we can recover nutrients from wastewater and turn them into resources, whether fertilizer or, a big one now, is turning the solids, the carbon in wastewater, into methane, a form of energy you might even be using this morning if you turned on a cook stove with natural gas, the blue flames. You could replace the blue flames, which are from the ground typically, into current carbon, carbon gas or methane or biogas that's from decomposing carbon in wastewater as well as landfills. But what's really interesting is that Sweden, which has a policy to reduce its import, actually to halt its imported petroleum by, I believe, 2012, now has whole bus systems and public transit systems and even cars fueled with biogas or methane that was derived from wastewater.
Amazing. Well, that's something to strive for. And that kind of leads me into my next question about what's the scoop on poop and wastewater management worldwide at this, just if you could give us a few examples of what other countries are doing as far as waste management.
Well, other countries, because they are leapfrogging over some of the mistakes we made in the Western world, they're going from sometimes open defecation or pit latrines to best practices. We're seeing more wastewater wetlands turning up. India is famous for some of these. There's a big one in Calcutta that happened naturally, but now is managed as a wastewater wetland. And in a wetland, you have aerobic and anaerobic biology that can convert the nutrients from human waste into, it gases it off to the atmosphere. But in India, they're also using these wetlands to grow food and to grow fish, both plants and fish. And Sweden might be one of the best examples. Again, collecting wastewater, collecting the carbon in wastewater. They are adding carbonaceous waste like cardboard, paper waste, adding that to the wastewater to boost the carbon content, and they're getting more biogas from that than most operations do. So they figured out how to take these waste streams that we used to use a lot of energy just to get rid of or to recycle, and they're turning it into the fuel that we use every day in our home, to heat our homes, to cook our food, to power our cars and our public transit systems. And all of that required some upfront investment that we're not used to making here in the United States. But that's what it's going to take for a shift like that. We'll have to invest in the future to ultimately lower our costs and our energy inputs. And at the same time, we're reducing our wastewater management costs. So it's a really elegant cycle. And then at the same time, you're getting all of these countries adopting the little urine diverting toilets and the urine diverting composting toilets, as well as combined composting toilets, and showing that you can manage all of this on site without any water, with only a little bit of water, and sometimes rainwater or gray water, washing water. So a lot of countries are showing the way, and they don't have laws that make this hard to do or permitting processes that seem a little daunting to people as they do in the United States when you want to install something new and innovative.
Carol, what would you say about the history of waste management? You talked a bit about England and how waste would just enter the river. Has recycled human waste ever successfully, I'm sure it has, as I'm asking the question, ever successfully been used? I've heard of night soil in Asia, which I believe was raw sewage just going out on the fields, which doesn't sound so safe. Could you give us an example maybe from history of what people were doing, a successful model?
Yeah, actually you just brought one up. China has been long known for, and maybe most of Asia, for collecting human excreta, human waste, poop, and using it on the fields. And as you say, it wasn't the absolute best practice. For one thing, when poop leaves our bodies, it's not in a nutrient form that plants are quite ready to use. It does need to be transformed by the biology in the soil, and nitrogen turned from a nitrite to a nitrate form. All of this happens with helpful biology all around us and in the soil. So China, now that it's trying to export crops especially, is trying to figure out how to marry its past in elegantly closing the loop, as you say, with resources, but also using best practices that are palatable to customers of their crops. And so you see some community composting schemes in China. At the same time, China is just like North America. It's massive. So in some places it's not working out. In some places they offer some glowing examples. And in many places the way it's done is not how we perhaps would see it done in the U.S., but can be adapted. But a lot of what's getting in the way right now is in the U.S. and in some developed countries, we're not used to managing our own waste. We're used to flushing and forgetting, and we expect somebody else somewhere else to manage that for us. When we create these complex wastewater systems that pull different products from the wastewater stream, including water, we're hearing more and more about sewage mining, especially in Australia, where somebody might actually pull your sewage from the pipe before it gets to the treatment plant because that water and carbon is so valuable. We need regulatory frameworks and we need local models for managing this complexity. If we're going to pull If we're going to divert urine, we need populations that are on board with that. We need farmers to collect the urine, or we need central management districts and management authorities that send folks out and check on systems in the community. So right now, I really see the gap as one of not technology. There are enough technologies and systems and solutions out there, but ways to introduce them to populations and ways to manage them.
So in Sweden, where they're taking methane produced from the wastewater treatment plants, will using energy created by those plants, does that cement in that way of waste management, or do you think that it will eventually phase out and we might all be pooping in composting toilets, or any thoughts you have on that?
As far as better approaches for wastewater management and capturing resources, let's remember that there are a wide range of possibilities. Early on, like 15 years ago, I used to be adamant that we all had to have composting toilets. Now, I don't say that at all. I know that they won't be acceptable to many. They're not appropriate to some places where people can't manage them, or there's not enough room for them, and on and on and on. There's a wide range of ways to capture resources and reach the results that we're all looking for. So with Sweden using wastewater to fuel stoves and public transit, you know what they're doing, and I think we'll see more of this in the U.S., they are showing how to use current carbon to fuel transportation and our houses instead of going under the Earth's crust and digging up that carbon that existed, hundreds of thousands of years ago, ancient carbon, and bringing it to the Earth's surface, which is what global warming is a result of, partly, in large part. So using current carbon instead of ancient carbon is something we all should be striving for. It's a way to keep a high quality of life without exacerbating climate change and global warming. So there's nothing that's, we shouldn't think of a central treatment plant with resource capture as being less virtuous than having a composting toilet with no water in our houses. It's just something that's working for a community, and especially a community that has a lot of water. So using water for that isn't necessarily a bad thing. In the desert, where water may come from hundreds of miles away or is scarce, then we look for another range of solutions. And at the same time, if we all just want to live our values and we don't like that central treatment plant, again, just peeing on Earth, bringing our urine to where it can be used, where it can be added to our compost piles. If you have not a lot of nitrogen, but you have a lot of brown leaves or brown grass clippings, that is doing a lot for your treatment plant. Your treatment plant operator, like the one in Palo Alto, will say, thank you. Nearly our entire energy bill is used to denitrify, to take that nitrogen out that you're putting in with your urine. So it's easy for us to do what we can, take that warm-up water that you get from the tap every day, trying to get the temperature right in your shower. In my house, it takes forever. We have a bucket under the spigot, and that's what the tomatoes drank this morning. So lots of little things you can do to walk the talk. We don't have to wait for laws to change or our plumbing to change.
That brings us to your website and the books that you've written. And could you give our listeners your contact information and where they could find out more about all of this?
Well, we've written 3 books, and we have another in the works, Grow with the Flow. Our first book is the Composting Toilet System book. It's available in many libraries. It's been out for about 12 years, and we have a new edition coming out, but you're not missing a lot. The new edition just features some new examples, but the systems are all pretty much the same, and we also show folks how to make a system that's very low cost with or without a microflush or one-pint flush toilet. The second book was an easy book, kind of a novel book that both the converted and the unconverted might appreciate. Liquid Gold, the lore and logic of using urine to grow plants. And a lot of people buy it and put it on the back of their toilet for people to read. But it's all about the history of humans using urine as a resource and ways to do that easily, as well as with special toilets, and how we can use urine to grow our fuels, petroleum, cycling. And then the third book is Reusing the Resource, and it's a book, if you just flip through it, you would think it's a gardening book, but it's about all different ways to use wastewater as a resource. And our new book will have a lot more DIY projects and examples of people making this work in their cities. And all of those can be seen at ecowaters.org. And a lot of them are available in libraries across the country. We've sold them to a lot of libraries. Liquid gold, you can see some information about that at peonearth.com. And we have a poster for Pea on Earth Day that should be posted there pretty soon. And we hope to have more workshops this year, probably starting in September. We'll get back into offering tours of homes with ecological wastewater systems installed and workshops. And at ecotoilet.org, don't go there now, but in about 3 months we should have some discussion groups up for all different kinds of composting toilet projects.
Yeah, and I noticed on your website they can range from small toilets to whole house composters, which sounds very interesting.
You got it.
Could someone design a system for their home where they're getting their gray water and their toilet water and then not letting anything leave their property?
You definitely could. A lot of people just aren't motivated to do that because it's going to involve playing with their plumbing and that sort of thing, but there are a lot more examples out there of people using gray water to flush toilets. The only problem with that is some things in our gray water can gum up the toilet. You do want to filter it a little bit. Gray water, as you know, is getting popular as a way to irrigate yards. And here in California, you now no longer need to get a permit if you're just using your washing machine gray water to irrigate your yard. And you do have to install that in a certain way that's outlined on state websites and through various organizations doing a lot of good work and getting the word out and conducting workshops. Probably a lot more books will be on the market just about gray water in the next few years.
It's exciting. We live in exciting times, even though there's many scary things happening and environmentally it can be challenging. I think it's also, we're right at the beginning of a new revolution, I believe.
Right. A lot of what we think of as environmental stressors are actually prompting a lot of good choices and a lot of choices we all kind of wanted to always make but didn't feel driven to make or supported in those decisions. So like you say, what seems like scarcity and strife in the world and fuel insecurity actually will be driving better choices for infrastructure.
Pet poop. Does pet poop have a place in composting toilets?
It can. Pet poop. Does it belong in composting toilets? I have been told, I have actually written a column on this for Natural Home a few years back, and I talked to some veterinarians, and I was told that pet poop can have pathogens that are conveyable to humans. You might have heard that too, especially cats. So what I would do, I don't have pets right now, my friends do, and I've created a composter for that, and in that case, I would still really contain that pet poop. I don't think that feline AIDS and some of these other diseases will last more than 2 years in a composter. So let's say you're following your dog with the plastic bag in hand, as we see dog walkers do in the city. Go get those bio bags, all those little biodegradable bags or paper bags, and put their poop in a composter you can make out of a perforated plastic garbage can or a drum or a waste basket or something kind of enclosed, and give it a lot of time and heat, at least one good hot summer, and then you might use it trenched into soil around trees. I wouldn't use it on edibles. And let me go back on the composting toilet end product. It's generally recommended, as you might imagine, that you don't put brown composted humus from a composting toilet on root crops, something where they can touch the food directly. I put it around my tomatoes.
Is there anything, Carol, that I did not know enough about to ask you, or anything else you want to share with our listeners?
No, Jill, you really covered a lot of ground. It's a vast topic. I mean, it's all about water. It's about a key discharge in our bodies processes every day. I mean, we spend, probably 1/30 of our day dealing with pooping in the toilet and finding a bathroom, or the guys finding the tree and no one's watching. So it's really a big, big topic that doesn't get much attention. So you're doing us all a favor by helping with that and getting some attention to this topic that we all kind of titter about, and it's not considered polite dinner conversation, and yet it's a key element or part of our ecosystem and the infrastructure and cycle of our nutrients and our gray water and other discharges from our homes and factories and agriculture. So we've covered a good chunk of it, and I'm sure your listeners have their own stories and their own solutions to share. Maybe we'll hear more of that on your show one day.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. This has been great. Fascinating.
Thank you.
You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. For more information or to hear our other podcasts or interviews, visit www.sustainableworldradio.com. Sustainable World Radio is produced by Jill Cloutier. Music by Dana Lyons. Thanks for listening.